All right. Hey there, comedy fans. Welcome to my first joke, the podcast where we dive into the hilarious stories of how comedians got their start. I'm your host, Kareem Kanji. Today, I am joined by comedian Mark DeBonis. Before we get started, don't forget, subscribe to My First Joke wherever you listen to podcasts. If you enjoy what you hear, and even if you don't, share it anyway. Share it with your friends, leave a review, hit us up with those 5 stars. And if you want to stay in the loop, you can follow me on Instagram at Kareem Kanji. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Mark DeBonis.
Thanks for having me, Kareem. How's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm good, long day. I know we've been kind of juggling times for this, and I'm happy
Yeah.
to finally get going and having a little conversation here.
Yeah. Well, listen, I really appreciate it. First question off to you, Mark. Um,
Yeah.
why stand-up comedy? What inspired you to get into this game?
The short version of that is that I went to school for writing for television. I actually went to the Humber program,
Okay.
and I did not know that. So you told me at the beginning before we recorded you're from Scarborough. I'm from
Yeah.
Scarborough, and I don't know about how who you grew up with, but no one in my life was a comedian, an actor. Like it wasn't even a possibility in my brain.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another. I liked editing skateboard videos,
Wow.
and from there, because I used to skateboard, and from there I started thinking about the idea of editing, and then somehow writing popped up in my brain. And I did not really like Shakespeare as a kid. It was not something that I was
Yeah.
into.
Fair.
So I Googled a writing program without Shakespeare, and I somehow found Humber College. And I'm like, what is this? Like, it didn't even seem real. And it was the comedy writing and performing program, and it was, being from Scarborough, this was in Etobicoke, so it was actually a possibility to some level. And I signed up for it, didn't know much about it, and I was probably 19 at the time. And they called me back and they said I had to audition.
Oh.
And I'm just like, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, you got to do improv, stand up, and write a sketch. I'm like, well, I only want to write a sketch. And they're like, well, if you don't do that, you can't come in the program. So I didn't go. I just told them I'm not coming. And I went to Seneca at York for digital media arts. And I ended up unfortunately dropping out in the second year. I
Yeah.
worked at a restaurant, didn't really know what was going on, and I was talking with a friend, and this comedy program was kind of in the back of my brain. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, whatever, whatever. So
Wow.
I sucked it up, and I reapplied to Humber, and I had to go in and do the audition, which I was terrified of because I'm like never in my like the only microphone experience I had was like working at like a Harvey's and calling out like orders for customers. So it was like a whole back and forth, and it ended up going well, I guess. And one of the teachers kind of saw something in me more than I would have seen, and he kept me talking in the audition. And that was kind of like there was a lot that happened in the audition. Like, I don't want this to be
Wow.
too long, but like when I walked into the room, there was a coffee table and there was muffins and coffee, and I grabbed the muffin and I start like eating the muffin, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Isn't aren't these muffins for everybody?" And they're like, "No, those are our muffins." And I'm like, "Well, why are they at the front of the door? Like they should be on your side." I walk into a room and there's coffee and muffins. I'm assuming it's for everybody. And then I did the audition, and I went back into the room, and everyone saw me with a coffee and a muffin, and they were like, "They gave you a muffin?" And I was like, what, you guys didn't get one? And then all of a sudden, everybody in the room stopped and was like, what happened in that audition? And fast forward maybe almost a year, I got into the program, and part of Humber is you have to do stand up. And I kept telling my teacher, I don't want to do it. I'm not
Yeah.
into it, and it's nothing that I care to do, whatever, whatever. And he's like, Mark, if you don't do it, you're gonna fail pretty much. So I was one of the last people to do 2 minutes at Yuck Yuck's Humber night.
Wow.
And I was one of the last, and then it ended up going well, but I had a story that I did because I didn't understand what a joke was, and I was doing a story, and my teacher was like, that's kind of a thing that happened on Seinfeld, and I'm like, well, it happened to me last weekend, and then he's like, can you do it one more time? Like, just go up next week again and try something else. So I went up the next Tuesday, and the way I tell the story, I've never done heroin, but the second I walked off stage that second time, it was like tunnel vision for the next 12 to 13 years, pretty much until I moved to Los Angeles. I every single day did stand up 1 to 5 times a day. Like it was insane.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it was
Wow.
honestly a crazy, it just shot up. Like it was, I don't know what it was.
Wait, like you just got hooked on it.
It was I don't even know how to explain it because like obviously like I said I've never done heroin so I can't even give it like a full on example, but
Yeah.
it was something that I've never experienced before. The way that I look at it, people think that comedians are wanting to be in the spotlight or center of attention or whatever. And there are obviously comics that are like that. The only way I describe it is it completed my thoughts because my brain
Oh,
didn't change. And I was always like the crazy guy or whatever at work where people were laughing but never really took me serious. And I would
yeah.
have these thoughts, and then now there were laughs connected to them. So it's like music where it made my thoughts make sense. And that is the only thing that I could describe because it was just yeah, like it went from 0 to 100 very fast. And being from Toronto, I didn't know anything about comedy, but I knew people who owned bars and restaurants.
Yeah.
And I understood how to make money. And very fast, I was running 3 shows a week almost. And, paying comics like within my first year or two, like it all happened so fast. I didn't have time to process it. I just kind of kept moving.
That's amazing. That's a really, really great story. Do you remember do you remember the first like proper joke? When I say proper, I mean it wasn't that story that you told. Not putting that story down. That might have been
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah. No, no, yeah, yeah.
fantastic. But do you remember that first joke that you told that you said, let me see if this joke writing works, and you went up on stage and do you remember that?
So I would say that there was a lot of gibberish that was happening, and it was hard to know if the audience was laughing at how I was talking, how I looked, or what I was saying. But there were one or two jokes that I think, looking back on it now, made me as a new comic kind of stand out. And one of them was how um, be essentially, and we're talking like 15 plus years ago here. I'm like, bees are the terrorists of the insect world because they have one shot and they're dead. And then I essentially compared them to like suicide bombers, and then how people on the bus completely shut down when there's a bee on the bus. So that was that whole joke. And then the other one was about DVD players and having the eject button on the remote and
Yeah,
not understanding what the point of it is because you still have to get up at the end unless you've mastered the art of throwing the DVD into the tray. So those were two that were kind of like I don't even remember how I worded them now, but that was the gist of them. And it was something that I was like, oh, this is not a ramble. I'm doing the same words every time, and they're
yeah,
getting laughs and or applause breaks. So
yeah.
it started making me look at it a bit different and take it a little bit more seriously.
Oh, that's very interesting. I want to come back to that, but tell me about, you talked about you weren't sure if the audience was reacting to the way you looked or your hair or
Yeah.
your joke. Um, do you recall, but you do remember, okay, they're clapping here, they're laughing here. Um, how did the first time you told these couple of jokes, How did you feel about it? How did you feel about the reaction? How did you feel about the way it came off?
I, honest to God, I could not tell you. It was very much, I had, it was almost 5 years of me doing stand up that I remember sitting in an audience once and looking at everyone laugh at my friend literally just doing fart jokes on stage. And the audience is dying of laughter. And I'm watching this and I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Like these people are here watching an adult talking about farting. They paid to be here and they're dying of laughter. I'm like, what is happening? And it was not honestly until like almost 10 years in that like it went in my brain that this is real because I just
Huh.
got so buried in what I was doing and I was not I wasn't thinking about it. I was reflecting on the material being like, why didn't this work and how does this work? But I wasn't thinking about how it was making me feel, because I was
Oh,
just so buried in it. And I would say it was only in recent years that I've actually processed how stand up makes me feel because I've had more time off now than I've ever had before.
okay. Okay. I want to, this kind of leads me to the next question in terms of
Yeah.
how your style has evolved. So, um, I hate using this term, like let's drill
Yeah,
down
yeah.
into this, but tell me, you hear this guy telling these fart jokes, and it like what was it that clicked for you? Was it, and you talked about how you felt, like can you talk a little bit more about that and how that's changed how you approach stand up or joke writing or joke telling?
Well, okay, so I believe that your very first set ever
Yeah.
is what your true style is. And
Okay.
because at that point, you don't know what your style is. Okay.
Fair. Yeah.
So you may watch comedians and have inspirations and all this and that, but whatever you do the very first time is kind of a glimpse into what could be your future style. And I think about what I first did, the first show or two shows, and in my mind, for me, and I do think this is not, I'm not unique in this scenario. I think a lot of people do this. It ended up coming back around where there was a story element, there was an observation element, and like an obscure thought with a little persona. And I'm not at all a dirty comic, and it's not a choice. It's just not how my brain works. And starting out doing a lot of bar shows, it's hard to talk about popcorn and shoelaces when the audience is drunk and they just want to hear dick jokes. So
Yeah.
there was a
Yeah.
period where my I tried to do what I thought the audience wanted to hear,
Oh,
and
interesting.
it was very weird. Like I didn't feel natural with it. And being from Toronto and knowing a bunch of people, it started getting out that I do stand up. And one guy came up to me and he's like, "Man, I heard you're doing stand up now." And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess, whatever." And he's like, I am like the president of this university and their residents." And I was like, oh, "Okay." And he's like, "Well, we're doing a big show at U of T. Do you want to do a spot?" And I just said, yeah, not realizing that it was like an 800 seat theater. And I almost like had a heart attack after because I've never imagined anything to that level.
Yeah.
Fast forward, I do the show, I'm working at the bar, and someone came up to me and she told me that she's like, I remember your jokes from that show. And she's like, I was on the bus and I saw B and your whole act popped back into my head. And it made me realize that whatever it is I'm doing, it may not like be the funniest in the moment. It may work or not, but it is leaving an impression on audience members.
Mm.
So I dropped whatever, child dirty material, not child, you know what I mean, childish
Sure.
dirty material I was doing. And then I just really started focusing again on what I wanted to talk about. And it just happened to be grilled cheeses and shoelaces. And I'm like, I started focusing on it and sticking with it with or without the audience for a period of time, you know?
That's really, really interesting. Okay, that's really interesting. Um, Mark, I got sort of like a final question
Yeah.
for you. You talked, I think we hadn't started recording yet, but you talked about just recently coming back from LA, I think. Um,
Yeah, so sorry, yeah.
yeah. Um, so not related to LA, but maybe it is, I don't know. Um, do you feel like you've made it in comedy, or is there something are you chasing your next 800 seat theater, if you know what I mean? Tell
Yeah.
me about, yeah.
So to answer your question in one line, I went from LA to Buffalo. So I don't think in any world I could ever say that I've made it. But that being said, at this point, I do know more on what I want in this out of this world.
Yeah.
I see myself performing for the rest of my life. And I do see where I could be an asset in the industry and
Okay.
also as a comedian. So I do like more behind the scenes stuff. Like I said, I went to school before for digital media arts. And in the last 5 years almost, I really started focusing more on the production side and filming specials for comics and one man shows and really honing that skill and learning how to do that. But you're always to be honest, what I miss the most, which is the thing, is like not performing with like a core group of friends. Because when you're performing with a core group of friends that are like good comics, you're always in a weird competition with each other to, oh, you have
Mm,
one new joke, I'm going to do three now. And then you keep growing and it was only until recently I realized like how much of that I really enjoyed about comedy and I've been missing that for the last couple years because everyone moves to different cities and evolves and grows and changes, but you always have that like we went to war with each other bond.
that's amazing. That's really, really good. Who are you producing or filming these days? Anything you could talk
So there
about?
was well yeah, the last one I did a couple months ago was a comic from Western Canada. His name's is Charles Haycock. So I went out to Calgary and filmed his thing. And we're actually we're getting in, we're doing some experimental recordings in March, and I don't want to talk too much about it just in case it doesn't happen. And then there's another comic, Sammy Fareed. I'm filming his special, and I did Amy Bugg's special in Toronto, and a handful of comics that are associated with like Comedy Records and Comedy Bar. I helped just record their stuff. Like I didn't have any hand either than just filming them, but yeah. So it's like I definitely like that world, and
Yeah,
there's just little things that you see that are done online, and it's like I just do love stand up, and I want it to be the viewer to be able to watch it and not think that this sounds weird or looks weird, and it's just clean. So that's kind of where I'm at.
that's awesome. Mark, this has been a fun chat. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of My First Joke. I hope you had as much fun listening as I had chatting with Mark DeBonis. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to My First Joke wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Share it with your friends and take a moment to rate, review, and 5-star the podcast. You can also check out the website, myfirstjoke.ca. My name is Kareem Kanji. Until next time, remember.
I was gonna have a rhyme about staying out of trouble and stopping on a dime, but it might be too cheesy. So,
Thanks so much, Mark.
oh, thank you.